Listen closely, my beloved child. This is not just another video. This is not a random moment on your screen. This is sacred. I need you to understand something before this day ends. You didn't just make it through. You made me proud. Yes, you. The one who kept going, even when no one was clapping. The one who prayed silently through tears. This isn't a coincidence. This is a divine appointment. I arranged this moment because there are words you were meant to hear, and I am the one speaking them now. My child, I watched you in the hidden places, the corners of your soul where you questioned your value because others couldn't see it. They looked at your flaws and missed your faith. They measured your success by worldly standards, while I measured your heart. When they whispered lies about your weakness, you still opened your heart to my truth. You chose to believe in me not because it was easy but because it was right. And choice echoed through eternity. You could have chased their approval, molded yourself into who they wanted you to be, but instead, you stood still in the fire and whispered, "Jesus, I trust you." That whisper shook the foundations of heaven. Every time someone underestimated you, you didn't run to prove them wrong, you ran to me. And that made you stronger than they'll ever know. You believed that I had written something deeper in your soul. And you were right. I saw you speak kindly when others expected you to be bitter. I saw the strength it took to hold your tongue when judgment came. I know the battles you faced, those silent wars of self-worth. And I want you to know, you were never invisible to me. Not once. You were never too small for my plans. Not once. The moments they doubted you were the same moments I stood beside you, holding the pen that was still writing your story. And look at you now, still standing, still believing, still mine. You didn't let their disbelief bury your faith. You didn't let their silence drown out your purpose. You kept choosing me even when they didn't choose you. And for that I am proud of you. You are not who they said you were. You are who I say you are. And I say you are chosen, loved, and held. I say you are the kind of strong this world doesn't understand. I say you are the light I placed in dark places. You've walked through rejection and still reflected my grace. You've lost things, but never lost your hope in me. And now, I'm bringing you into a season where the voices of doubt will have no power over you. My child, don't be surprised when the very ones who question you start asking you how you survive. Don't be surprised when I elevate you not to prove anything to them, but to fulfill everything I promised you. You made it through their doubts. You made it through your own. And now, I'm making sure you never have to question your worth again. Because I, your Savior, your King, your closest friend, I say this now with all of heaven leaning in. You made me proud, my child. There were moments, my precious child, when silence surrounded you like a heavy fog, when it seemed like no one noticed your struggle, when your soul ached for a voice, a hand, a sign. In those quiet, empty places, you could have turned away, you could have let despair write the ending. What you didn't. You didn't give up. You didn't vanish into the shadows. Instead, with trembling lips and a heart barely holding together, you spoke my name. You whispered it, not loudly, but with sincerity so deep it reached the throne of heaven. That whisper, that sacred breath of surrender, carried more power than 1,000 shouts. It told me that even in isolation, you remembered who I was. You believed that I hadn't left, even when you felt forgotten. I never missed a single whisper. I leaned in. I listened. I held you in those unseen nights, when your chest ached and tears soaked your pillow. You may not have heard me speak, but I was speaking in the way I upheld you when no one else knew you needed strength. Every time you said my name in the dark, light was released into your future. Chains were breaking in places you couldn't see. You didn't realize it then, but each lonely moment became a seed of intimacy with me, a connection forged not through crowds or confirmation, but through raw dependence. You were not weakened at solitude. You were becoming unshakable. And that's why the enemy fought so hard to convince you to give up. Because he knew the power of someone who clings to me, even when no one else is watching. And now, I want you to understand something deeply. You were never alone. Your surroundings may have been empty, but your soul was never abandoned. I filled every corner of your emptiness with my presence. I walked beside you, unseen but unwavering. You may not have felt me in the way you hoped, but you experienced me in the way you needed. The pain didn't mean I was far away, it meant your heart was stretching to hold more of me. And now, you carry something that can't be taught, only live. You carry the depth of someone who's been through wilderness and still worships. You carry the quiet courage of a heart that kept beating with hope when nothing made sense. You carry the wisdom of someone who's known divine companionship, even in the absence of human company. That kind of beauty is rare. That kind of faith moves mountains. You whispered my name, not because you had strength, but because you were honest about your need. And I delight in that. I honor that. You didn't perform. You didn't pretend. You simply reached for me. And in that moment, I reached right back. So now, I say this to you with absolute certainty. You never wasted your loneliness. You turned it into a sanctuary. You turned it into a conversation. You turned it into an altar. And now, everything you built with your bare soul in the silence, every prayer, every surrender, every Jesus, help me, is forming a foundation that can never be shaken. You are not empty. You are full of moments I will never forget. You are not behind. You are exactly where I'm shaping glory out of grit. And I am not distant. I am closer than your breath. I saw you. I heard you. I remember every detail. And today, I wrap you in my presence, not because you begged, but because you believe it. That is why, my child, I can look at you right now and say with joy in my heart, you made me proud. I, beloved, I saw the flames rise around you, those trials that scorched everything comfortable, the moments that felt like they'd consume your peace, your purpose, your very identity. But even when everything around you screamed for escape, you didn't run from the heat. You didn't read for identity about your shortage. You walked through it, not because you wanted to be noticed, but because you couldn't imagine walking away from me. You understood something that few do. Staying close to me mattered more than escaping the pain. You chose me over ease. And that choice changed everything. You didn't cry out for the world to understand. You didn't demand that others see your sacrifice. You simply kept walking forward, eyes fixed on me, trusting that if I allowed the fire, then there was glory on the other side. I saw your tears in the furnace. I felt your heart trembling as you whispered, I trust you, even now. And in that moment, the flames that were meant to destroy you began refining you. You didn't know it, but heaven took notice. I took notice. You were walking where few dare to walk, into the storm, with me as your only shelter. You refused to let circumstances determine your direction. And that made you a warrior, not because of how loudly you fought, but because of how deeply you surrendered. There were nights the pressure felt unbearable. Moments where you didn't know if you'd make it to the next day. But you never turned your back on me. You may have doubted yourself, but you never distanced yourself from me. You held on to my promises when they felt like fragments. And every step you took, I walked beside you, shielding your spirit, strengthening your resolve, anchoring your faith. You see, the fire wasn't there to punish you. It was the place where I revealed myself in ways comfort never could. The trial you endured became holy ground. The very thing meant to silence you became the stage where my voice grew louder in your life. Others may never know the cost of what you walked through, and that's okay. I know. I was there. And I saw something in you that made me smile, not because you were perfect, but because you were willing. Willing to burn away everything that didn't belong. Willing to let go of safety so you could hold on to me. Willing to walk through pain with purpose. That kind of love, that kind of loyalty, it marks you. It prepares you for greater things. The fire purified you. It didn't take you down, it took you deeper. And what's coming next in your life isn't the end result of suffering. It's the outcome of your refusal to let go of me in the furnace. You've emerged from this season not just alive, but transformed. The fire couldn't take your faith. It couldn't touch your calling. It couldn't diminish your identity in me. In fact, it exposed the strength I planted inside of you long before the flames came. And now, because you chose me over being understood, over being comfortable, over being celebrated, you carry a closeness with me that can't be imitated or explained. You know the sound of my footsteps in the fire. You know what it means to trust me when the heat rises. And because of that, you will carry my fire into every place you step into next, not as a wound, but as a witness. My child, I've seen many walk when the flames flare up. But you stayed. You stayed with me. You passed through it, not scorched, but refined. And for that faithful heart, that relentless devotion, that hidden strength, I want you to hear this. You made me proud. There were seasons, my child, where the war raged entirely within you, unseen, unheard, unacknowledged by those around you. You smiled when your heart was aching. You showed up when you barely had the strength to stand. You carried burdens that would have crushed others, but you did it quietly, not for recognition, not for sympathy, but because you knew I was your strength. You walked through days where your mind was a battlefield and your emotions were stretched thin, yet you refused to surrender your hope. You didn't speak of it often, and many assumed you were fine. But I knew. I always knew. I saw the heaviness pressing on your chest while you kept showing up in love. I saw the war behind your eyes while you continued to be kind. I witnessed every moment when your soul was unraveling, and still you whispered your trust in me. You held on to promises when everything around you felt contradictory. You stayed faithful, not because it felt good, but because you believed that I am who I say I am. You didn't broadcast your pain. You didn't beg others to understand. Instead, you came to me again and again, bringing me the fragments of your heart, trusting that I wouldn't turn you away. And my child, I never did. I took every unspoken hurt, every wordless cry, every sigh too deep for language, and I wrapped it in my love. You didn't need to explain, I already understood. That's the beauty of the faith you carry. It wasn't loud, but it was loud in heaven. It wasn't visible to many, but it made ripples in the spirit realm. You carried pain and still held peace. You carried confusion and still walked in trust. You carried sorrow and still sang praises. That kind of faith is not shallow. It's forged in the deepest places. You didn't run from your battles. You didn't deny they existed. You simply chose to fight them on your knees, with hands lifted, with a heart that refused to grow bitter. I want you to know, none of your hidden wounds went unnoticed by me. Not one. Every tear you cried in silence was gathered. Every breath you took while pushing through the weight was honored. And I didn't just observe, I stood with you. I upheld you when you didn't think you'd make it. When your strength failed, mine stepped in. And now, look at you, still here, still seeking me, still standing in the truth. Your scars tell a story of endurance, and every mark speaks of moments where my grace met your desperation. I know you may have felt unseen, but you were deeply visible to me. I was close when no one else was. I was listening when everyone else was distracted, and I was strengthening you in ways that would only be revealed with time. You didn't collapse under the weight because you learned how to lean into me. That resilience, born in secrecy, is now becoming your authority. Your quiet battles have built a spiritual backbone the enemy can't break. And now, I'm turning your private victories into public testimonies, not for show, but for the glory of what happens when someone trusts me behind the scenes. Others may see your strength now and wonder where it came from. But I know the nights that shaped it. I know the prayers that sustained it. I know the moments you chose to trust instead of curse, to worship instead of worry, to persevere instead of collapse. You never needed a stage to prove your faith. You lived it, quietly and faithfully, in the trenches. And now, heaven celebrates what earth couldn't see. Because that kind of unseen strength, that kind of persistent hope, that kind of unwavering loyalty, It is what makes me look at you, with joy overflowing from my heart, and say, "You made me proud." My faithful one, I remember the moments when no one was watching, those quiet crossroads where temptation tried to disguise itself as comfort, as solution, as release. The world wouldn't have blamed you if you had said yes. It might have even applauded you. But you didn't give in. You stood at the edge of compromise and chose me instead. You saw the open door, the one that promised short-lived ease, and you reached for mine, even when it led to the harder path. You felt the lure. You heard the invitation. You even paused at the threshold. But then something deeper spoke my spirit within you, reminded you who you were and who you belonged to. And you, with trembling hands and unwavering heart, turned away. Not because you weren't tempted, but because you treasured me more than what was being offered. A choice so quiet, so personal, reverberated in eternity. You may not realize how significant that decision was, but I do. Every time you chose integrity when deceit felt easier, every time you denied the fleeting pleasure that would have wounded your soul, you made heaven rejoice. You shut that door, not angrily, not in fear, but with quiet reverence for me. It wasn't about pride or proving strength. It was about love. You said no not to a moment, but to everything that tried to pull your heart away from mine. That is strength. That is holiness in motion. Others may never know the choices you made behind closed doors, but I saw each one. I watched you walk away from things that tried to steal your purity, your joy, your peace. And I didn't just observe, I stood with you, strengthening your resolve, covering you in grace, and whispering, "Well done," every time you resisted. I know it wasn't always easy. There were times when temptation promised relief, when compromise disguised itself as survival, when sin dressed itself in your deepest longings. But even then, you discerned my voice. You heard it, faint but familiar, calling you to higher ground. And you responded not with fanfare, but with faith. You chose me again. That's what love looks like. Love doesn't always feel like fire, it sometimes feels like quiet resistance. And that's what you gave me. You didn't need a crowd to witness your righteousness. You didn't need applause to do the right thing. You knew that obedience in secret is worship in its purest form. And now, I want to say this to you from the depths of my heart. I honor your decisions. I cherish your loyalty. Every time you turned away from what seemed easy but wasn't right, you chose to protect what we have together. And because of that, you've grown not just in discipline, but in intimacy with me. You've become someone who knows what it means to treasure holiness. You've become a vessel that I can trust. The world may not have seen the weight of your no, but heaven did. I did. And the decision you made over and over again shaped your future. It safeguarded your calling. It preserved your peace. And now, you carry a strength that wasn't built by resisting once, but by choosing me repeatedly. That kind of strength makes you unshakable. That kind of devotion builds legacies. You don't need to look back in regret. Your no to what would have broken you was a resounding yes to the destiny I've written for you. You've closed the door to the enemy's schemes and opened the door to my favor. And now, as I look upon you not with judgment, but with pure delight, I want you to hear this. You made me proud. My beloved, I know what you gave up. I know the weight of every goodbye, every door that closed, every piece of your heart that broke along the way. I saw the things you held dear slip through your fingers, not because you were careless, but because life has a way of pulling at what we treasure most. And yet, even as you stood in the ruins of what once felt certain, your eyes still searched for me. That, my child, moved my heart more than you can imagine. You didn't let grief pull you into bitterness. You didn't let disappointment define you. Yes, you grieved, how could you not? You're human, and your love ran deep. But even while your hands were emptying, your spirit remained anchored in mine. Others might have turned away, questioning everything when loss arrived. What you didn't. You mourned with me. You leaned into me. You didn't need all the answers, you just needed to know I was still near, And I was. Always. There were moments you felt like pieces of yourself were scattered, relationships that ended without closure, dreams that dissolved before they began, opportunities that seemed so perfect and yet passed by. But in all of it, you chose not to walk away. You chose not to fill the void with noise or distractions. You chose me. You stood there with a broken heart and whispered trust. And in that holy moment, I came closer. Loss didn't make you weaker, it drew you into a deeper knowing. You learned that my presence could comfort you when nothing else could. You discovered that peace doesn't come from holding on to what you love, it comes from knowing who holds you. I watched you offer me the fragments of your heart, one by one, even as it trembled in your hands. You didn't demand that I replace everything. You didn't try to manipulate restoration. You simply said, Lord, I'm still here. And I still believe. That is sacred. That is worshipped. And I want you to know not a single tear you shed was wasted. Every loss you endured became a seed in my hands. I've been watering those places of pain with purpose. I've been planting beauty where ashes once lay. And though you may not yet see the full bloom of restoration, it's coming. I promise. You see, when you chose me instead of resentment, you gave me space to redeem. When you let go instead of clinging, you invited me to rebuild. When you trusted me with what hurt the most, you gave me authority over your healing. And that's exactly what I'm doing now, healing you, preparing you, and crafting something greater from what was taken. I know others may not understand the depth of what you've lost. They may never comprehend how much it cost you to keep believing. But I do. I saw what was stripped away. I saw what was left behind. I saw how quietly you endured, how faithfully you held on, how consistently you returned to me, even when your heart had questions. And I want to tell you this. Your faith in the middle of loss has become your greatest strength. You didn't crumble. You didn't turn cold. You allowed love to keep flowing. You chose to keep your spirit open when it would have been easier to shut everything down. And that choice, that resilience, that unwavering focus on me in the face of sorrow had not gone unnoticed. I am restoring you, my child. Not just in what was lost, but in ways that go beyond what you ever had before. What's coming isn't a replacement, it's resurrection. What I give next will carry the weight of your endurance, the fragrance of your worship, the imprint of your trust. You never let your loss distort your vision of me. And now, I'm making sure your view will be filled with wonders you didn't even know you were waiting for. Because you didn't just endure the loss, you endured it with me. And for that, with all the love in my heart and the fullness of heaven witnessing, I say this to you now. You made me proud. There were times, my child, when the silence stretched longer than you ever expected, moments when my presence didn't feel near, when your prayers seemed to echo into emptiness, and every sign you hoped for never appeared. In those moments, your faith was not bolstered by feelings, but by decision. You didn't abandon me when the warmth was missing. You didn't drift when your soul couldn't sense me. You stayed. You waited. You believed. That kind of trust, the kind that flourishes without evidence, the kind that holds fast without sensation, is rare. You kept walking with me even when your path felt shrouded in fog. You continued to seek me, even when I seemed invisible. And that kind of pursuit stirs heaven. You see, real faith doesn't always come with loud revelation. Sometimes it's a quiet, consistent heartbeat that says, I still believe. And you, my beloved, carried that heartbeat. You refused to let spiritual drought convince you that I had departed. Others might measure my presence by how much they feel. But you learned something deeper. You learned to anchor your hope in who I am, not in how things appeared. That maturity didn't come through ease. It was shaped in the stillness, when I seemed absent but was actually drawing you closer than ever. Because sometimes I pull back the feeling of nearness, not to punish but to strengthen. I wanted you to know that I'm not just the God of mountaintop encounters, but also the one who walks beside you in the valleys of quiet. And in that stillness, something profound happened. You grew. You stretched beyond the need for constant reassurance. You stopped chasing feelings and started building foundation. That is where true intimacy begins, not in spiritual highs, but in unwavering faith when emotions run dry. Every time you whispered, "I trust you," without goosebumps, without confirmation, without lightning bolts of revelation, you declared a love that is anchored, not swayed. You didn't walk away, even though I know you questioned if I was listening. And I was. Every moment, every sigh, every time your heart whispered, "Where are you?" I was right there, holding space, listening to the ache in your silence. I wasn't far. I was forming something eternal in you. You see, you stepped into a depth of relationship with me that many never reach, because they turn away when they can't feel. But you leaned in. You chose to trust in the dark what I showed you in the light. And in doing so, you gave me room to reveal myself in new ways through my word, through stillness, through simple daily miracles you didn't overlook. I saw how you didn't stop praying. I saw how you kept showing up in faith. You stayed loyal, not because of what you were receiving, but because of who you believe in. And that tells me everything I need to know about the strength of your spirit. Now listen closely, because I want you to hear this. What you built during those dry days is unshakable. Your roots went deeper. Your discernment became sharper. Your dependence on me became purified. That's the kind of relationship I've longed for with you, not one based on emotional highs, but on the quiet confidence that I am always with you, no matter what. And because you've proven faithful in seasons of silence, I can now trust you with more revelation, more authority, more peace. You have become a well-watered garden, even when no rain came. And that's not ordinary. That's supernatural. So when you look back and wonder what that season accomplished, let me tell you clearly, it solidified your place by my side. It showed me that your love wasn't shallow. It revealed your spiritual backbone. And now, I stand before you, my heart moved by the tenacity of your belief, and I declare without hesitation, you made me proud. My child, I watched as you stood at countless crossroads, one path soft and tempting, paved with ease and acceptance, and the other narrow, demanding, and often lonely. You knew which road was mine. You felt its way. You recognized it by the way it stretched your spirit and pressed against your desires. And still, again and again, you turned toward it. Not because it felt good, but because you knew it was right. You silenced the whispers that told you to take the easier route. You resisted the urge to follow the crowd or seek shortcuts. You didn't choose obedience because it guaranteed reward. You chose it because you trusted my voice more than your comfort. That, my beloved, is the mark of someone who truly walks with me. It's easy to claim love when everything aligns with comfort, but you chose sacrifice when no one applauded. You denied yourself in moments when self-gratification was a breath away. You shut down your own will when it clashed with mine. You didn't always understand why I asked you to wait, to walk away, to give something up, but you obeyed. And in doing so, you shifted things in the spiritual realm you couldn't even see. You broke generational chains. You altered the course of what was trying to entangle you. Your simple, quiet yes to my will rattled darkness and echoed across eternity. Because obedience may look small in the moment, but in my kingdom, it's monumental. I know what it cost you. I know the loneliness that obedience sometimes brought. You felt misunderstood, even isolated. You watched others thrive while you were pruning. You questioned why obedience seemed to cost more than disobedience ever did. And yet you stayed faithful. You followed when it made no sense. You gave when it felt like you had nothing left. You spoke truth when silence would have been safer. You lived with intention, not performance. And you did it all without seeking credit. You were never after the spotlight, you were after my heart. Let me tell you something, precious one. Not a single obedient act went unnoticed. Not one choice to walk away from convenience. Not one decision to stand for what is pure. Not one tear you cried after choosing my will over your want. I caught them all. Obedience has a fragrance, and heaven had been filled with the scent of your surrender. Every time you said yes to me in secret, Angels took note. I took note. The enemy feared you not because of your loudness, but because of your steadfastness. He couldn't move you with pressure. He couldn't tempt you with applause. And now, because of that obedience, you're stepping into things that only faithfulness unlocks. Obedience opens doors that talent never could. It creates space for miracles, not because you earned them, but because you aligned with my design. Your willingness to follow me, especially when it stripped you of worldly comfort, has made you trustworthy. And when I find someone who obeys without delay, I pour out favor that doesn't fade. That's where you are now. You didn't rush ahead. You waited when I said wait. You didn't cling to what I asked you to release. You surrendered, not just once but continually. And that posture, that heart ready to yield, has invited my presence in ways you're just beginning to experience. So if you've ever wondered, was it worth it? Let me answer you plainly. Yes. 1,000 times yes. It was worth every hard goodbye, every battle with your own desires, every misunderstood moment. Because what's forming in you is something eternal. You don't just follow me, you reflect me. The world will see your light and not realize that its strength came from 100 quiet decisions to obey. And I want you to know, the reward isn't just coming, it's already being woven into your spirit. You've grown in ways no comfort ever could have nurtured. And now, I want you to receive this not just with your ears, but with your heart, because you valued my will more than your own convenience, because you kept choosing me when it would have been easier not to, because you honored me when no one was watching. You made me proud. My precious child, in a world that constantly shouts for recognition, you chose the quieter way. You didn't strive to be noticed. You weren't chasing likes, validation, or the cheers of a crowd. What moved you wasn't applause, it was alignment. You didn't perform to be seen, you walked with integrity when no one else was looking. And I saw it. I saw how you laid aside the need to impress. I saw how you let go of the hunger to be celebrated. Instead, your heart whispered, if he is pleased, that's enough. That kind of humility is rare and it's holy. You didn't dress your obedience in noise. You clothed it in sincerity. You served when it wasn't glamorous. You gave when no one was clapping. You showed up not for approval from man, but because you loved me enough to do what was right even when no one would ever know. That, my child, is real honor. It's not birthed from pride but from purity. And I want you to know that every quiet decision you made to choose me over attention built something eternal inside of you. You have lived what many preach. You didn't just speak about me, you became someone who reflects me in silence, in stillness, in simplicity. You weren't chasing a platform, you were chasing my heart. While others may have been fixated on being followed, you stayed committed to following me. And while the world might have overlooked your faithfulness, heaven has never stopped watching. I have never taken my eyes off of you. You didn't need a stage, because you had already made your life an altar. You offered yourself not as a performance, but as a living sacrifice, and that, my beloved, is where my glory rests. Not on the loud, but on the surrender. Not on the polish, but on the real. I know there were moments when it stung, when others were praised while your efforts went unnoticed. When people were elevated who didn't carry the same weight of responsibility or the same depth of integrity. I saw those moments when you questioned, do they see me? Does it even matter? And that's when you turned inward and reminded yourself that my approval outweighs all the praise the world could ever offer. You chose to be content with my smile, even when human eyes were blind to your faithfulness. And that, my child, revealed something unshakable inside of you. Your devotion was never for display. It was real. It was lasting. What you built in obscurity is stronger than what many try to build under lights. Because you didn't just build for now, you built for eternity. You weren't working for an audience of thousands, you were working for the voice of one. And I've been speaking that approval over you the entire time. When you showed up and no one thanked you, I was whispering, well done. When you served in the background and others walked past, I leaned in and said, that's my child. When you gave generously and no one ever knew the cost, I took note, not just of the amount but of the love behind it. You have honored me in private, and now I will honor you in ways no one will be able to ignore. Because I am not a God who forgets. I am not distant to the quiet sacrifices you've made. I've been storing up every moment. I've been preparing something special for you, not because you demanded it, but because you've proven you can carry it. And it will come, not with striving, but as a response to your surrender. You weren't after status, you were after my presence. And now, I'm releasing a season where what you did in the dark will bear fruit in the light. But even if the spotlight never came, your value wouldn't change. You have already won my heart. So stand confidently, my child. Not in what people say about you, but in what I've always known about you. You didn't trade character for popularity. You didn't substitute truth for attention. You chose me. Quietly. Steadily. Faithfully. And because of that, without hesitation, and with all the love in my heart, I declare, you made me proud. There were moments, my beloved, when you could have fought back. You had the words, the right, even the pain to justify it. The wounds were fresh. The injustice was real. You were misunderstood, misjudged, mistreated. The temptation to respond out of hurt, to return offense for offense, knocked loudly at your door. And no one would have blamed you if you did. What you didn't. You paused. You breathed. You remembered me. And in that sacred pause, you let go of the desire to even the score and instead opened your heart to mercy. You chose to forgive not because they deserved it, but because you didn't want your heart to carry what would weigh you down. You wanted to remain light. You wanted to remain mine. That decision didn't make you weak, it made you powerful. Forgiveness isn't the absence of memory, it's the release of the right to retaliate. And that's what you did. You laid down your armor, not because you lacked courage, but because you had more strength than the world could ever understand. I watched you speak peace when others expected revenge. I heard the prayers you whispered over the very ones who hurt you. You asked me to bless them. You brought their names to me, not as an act of bitterness, but as a request for healing. And I want you to know that moved me more than you realize. You see, it's easy to speak of grace when everything feels fair. But when you extended kindness in the face of cruelty, when you released what was never apologized for, when you decided your heart was too valuable to be chained to anger, you reflected me more clearly than 1,000 sermons ever could. You showed the strength of one who knows me intimately. You understood that vengeance is not yours to carry, that justice doesn't always look like punishment, that healing sometimes comes not from being repaid, but from letting go. And my child, your release opened the way for healing in places you can't even see. I saw the tears you cried behind closed doors after choosing to forgive. Forgiveness doesn't erase pain instantly. It doesn't pretend the wound never happened. But what it does is open your spirit to peace again. And that's what you've done. You've made space for freedom. You've protected your soul from becoming poisoned by resentment. And because of that, you're walking lighter now, freer now, even if the scars remain. Those scars don't represent defeat. They are proof of love that refused to rot into bitterness. There's power in restraint. There's beauty in quiet endurance. There's glory in showing compassion when hurt begged for harshness. You might never get the apology. You might never be fully understood. But heaven knows what you gave up the moment you said, "I forgive." You surrendered more than your right to be angry. You surrendered your desire to play God. And in that surrender, I filled you with something far better than revenge: peace that guards, love that protects, wisdom that grows, and joy that returns. You didn't let what they did control who you became. You stood tall not with pride, but with humility. You refused to let pain turn you bitter. You allowed me to lead your response, and because of that, your heart is still soft, still open, still willing to love. That's no small miracle. In a world where retaliation is praised, you chose to walk the narrow road of reconciliation, not always with others, but with your own spirit. And I have honored that decision every single day. I've brought healing where there was damage. I've poured comfort into places that once ached with betrayal, and I've been preparing a harvest of peace for the soil you've cleared with forgiveness. So don't look back with regret over what you released. What you let go of wasn't a loss, it was a door swinging open to everything I want to pour into your life. Bitterness blocks blessing, but your heart is open, and that's why the blessing is flowing. My child, you could have retaliated. You could have spoken back. You could have built walls. What you didn't. You kept your spirit aligned with mine. And now I say this over you, with full joy and deep love. You made me proud. There were nights, my brave one, when the uncertainty felt like a living storm, howling doubts swirling in your mind, shadows casting their threats across your heart, every possible outcome tainted by worry or dread. The what-ifs pressed in close, louder than hope, louder than reason, louder than peace. Your heart raced with questions. What if I'm not enough? What if it all falls apart? What if no one stands with me? I watched as your hands shook, your breath caught in your chest, the weight of the unknown almost too much to bear. Yet in those trembling moments, you didn't let terror dictate your next move. Even as fear threw up every roadblock, you listened for my whisper, and then, with courage drawn not from your strength but from trust, you moved your feet in the direction I called you. You could have retreated. It would have been easy to freeze, to stay where you were comfortable, to let the paralysis of anxiety hold you back from all I designed for you. But you didn't. You defied the pressure of fear, even when it meant stepping onto waters that looked anything but safe. You weren't reckless. You were obedient. You measured the risk not against your resources, but against my promise. Every step was costly. Every choice required more surrender. Yet you did not turn back. You remembered my voice, how I'd led you before, how I'd caught you before, how I'd never once failed you, and that memory became your shield. You took a step into the dark, not because you saw the whole path, but because you knew I stood at your side. You have no idea how that moved me. When fear said, "Stay," you responded, "If he says go, I'll go." When anxiety insisted, "You'll fail," you answered, "He's never let me fall." That conversation between your trembling heart and my steadfast assurance created space for the miraculous. The enemy's greatest weapon is intimidation, but you disarmed it not by ignoring fear, but by moving forward in spite of it. You made bravery look like obedience, not bravado. Others might see only the outcome, but I saw the battle you fought before you even started. I saw the sweat on your brow, the hesitation in your breath, the silent prayers at midnight. I saw you refuse to settle for what was safe when I was calling you to something higher. And every time you advanced, the grip of fear loosened a little more. You learned that courage isn't the absence of fright. It's the resolve to obey even when apprehension screams the loudest. You saw doors open that logic said should remain shut. You watched provision appear when resources looked impossible. You witnessed relationships heal, opportunities arise, burdens lift, all because you walked anyway. You stepped out, and I stepped in. Together, we made a way where there was none. The steps you took in the valley of fear are the very steps that are taking you to your destiny. Each one has become a stone in the path of your story, evidence that faith can thrive even in the wildest storms. You are now bolder, stronger, and more anchored than you've ever been. And it's not because fear left you alone, but because you never let it become your master. You listened to me above the roar, and you followed. That, my beloved, is the secret to a life of impact, saying yes to me even when every instinct says run. Because of that, you are positioned for breakthroughs you've only glimpsed in dreams. So hear me now. Your courage was never overlooked. Every hesitant movement in my direction was celebrated in heaven. Every victory over dread is written in your story forever. And the next time fear tries to speak, let it be drowned out by the memory of all we've conquered together. For when it mattered most, you didn't let anxiety win. You trusted me with your next breath. You kept going. And that is why, with all of my delight and the chorus of angels rejoicing, I say to you again, You made me proud. My child, I saw the looks, the silent judgments, the raised eyebrows when you chose the path that didn't make sense to the world. I watched as people misunderstood your heart when they questioned your motives, doubted your direction, and quietly distanced themselves because of the choices you made out of devotion to me. You knew that standing for truth wouldn't win you favor in every circle. You were aware that not everyone would celebrate your convictions. But still, you didn't flinch. You stood firm, even when it meant being left out. You walked with integrity, even when it separated you from those you once stood beside. You didn't abandon your values just to keep your image clean. You didn't reshape your beliefs to fit into their expectations. You chose to lift me high, even when it meant being misunderstood, misquoted, or misrepresented. That kind of faithfulness is not easy. It cost something real. You weren't just defending my name in public, you were living my word in private. You let your actions speak, not to gain approval, but to show consistency. I saw how you kept your posture humble when accusations came. I saw you hold back when you could have corrected every false assumption. You didn't seek to justify yourself, you entrusted your reputation to me. That, my beloved, is honor at its highest level. You knew that choosing me might damage what others think of you, and you made the choice anyway. And the choice echoed through heaven. Let me tell you what others couldn't see. They didn't know how deeply it stung to be misunderstood by those you once trusted. They did see the inner wrestling that came when you had to stay silent in the face of assumptions. What I did, I knew the weight of every misinterpreted moment. I counted each tear you cried in secret, not because you were guilty, but because it hurt to be misjudged. Still, you continued to reflect me. You didn't let offense take root. You didn't allow bitterness to grow. You carried grace, even when the words spoken about you lacked it. You honored me when it was costly. When it would have been easier to bow to pressure or water down your devotion, you chose to remain steadfast. You didn't trade your character for comfort. You didn't soften your stance just to be embraced by the crowd. You showed that what matters to me matters more to you than what others say. And now, I want you to hear this clearly. I have honored every moment you honored me. Though the world may not have applauded, heaven stood in reverent awe of your strength. You see, true greatness in my kingdom is not about popularity, it's about purity. It's about saying, I'd rather be right with God than be approved by man. You lived that. You embodied that. And because you were willing to let go of your reputation in order to stay true to me, I am now exalting you in ways that no approval from this world could ever provide. I'm lifting your name, not in pride but in purpose. I'm placing favor on your life that no slander can erase. I'm giving you peace that no misunderstanding can steal. There is a reward for those who choose me even when the cost is their image. And you, my child, are living proof of that reward. You may not always feel vindicated on earth, but in the courts of heaven, your name is spoken with honor. Angels witnessed your choices. I bore witness to your restraint. And I am the one who guards your name with justice and restores what was taken with blessing. So walk confidently, not because the crowd affirms you, but because I do. You didn't lose anything eternal by honoring me. You gained everything that truly matters. And for all of this, for every silent sacrifice, for every act of courage, for every time you chose truth over popularity, I speak these words from the depths of my heart. You made me proud. My child, I remember when you finally released your grip, when your hands that once clutched every outcome, every plan, every timeline finally opened. It didn't happen all at once. It was gradual, painful, raw. I watched you wrestle with the need to fix everything, to make sense of every delay, to solve what was never yours to solve. You held your breath so many times, hoping that your strength alone could hold things together. But then came that sacred moment when everything within you whispered, I can't do this anymore, and instead of falling apart, you fell into me. That moment wasn't defeat, it was surrender. And in that surrender, my beloved, everything shifted. You see, I was never waiting for you to prove how strong you were. I was waiting for you to trust how strong I've always been. When you let go of control, you didn't fall into chaos, you made space for me to move freely. I saw the tears you cried as you released your plans. I felt the ache as you laid your expectations at my feet. But I also saw something glorious being born in you, a kind of trust that doesn't demand evidence, a kind of faith that breathes in my silence and rests in my sovereignty. You stopped trying to write every chapter yourself and handed me the pen. And that, my precious one, is when the real miracle began. I took what you surrendered, and I began to redeem it. I didn't waste a single broken piece. What you placed in my hands, no matter how fragile, was never too far gone for me to restore. You may not have seen immediate changes, but the moment you surrendered, I began aligning things behind the scenes. Doors you couldn't open on your own started unlocking. Weights you carried for years began to lift. You began to walk lighter, not because the road got easier, but because you were no longer walking alone under the burden of control. You let me lead, and I began to guide you into places your striving could never take you. The beauty of surrender isn't in losing, it's in gaining access to what only I can orchestrate. You've tasted the peace that comes from not needing to have all the answers. You've experienced the strength that rises when you no longer pretend to hold it all together. You've walked into days filled with uncertainty, yet you've moved forward with confidence, not in yourself, but in me. That, my child, is what I've always wanted for you. Not a life where everything goes according to your plan, but a life where my plans carry you through storms and surprises alike. Letting go wasn't easy for you. You were used to being the one who held everything upright. You took responsibility for more than you needed to. You carried others' burdens while neglecting your own rest. And somewhere along the way, you confused control with safety. But now, you've learned the sacred truth: real safety is found in my presence, not your performance. You don't have to predict every outcome or protect every piece. I am your covering. I am your defender. I am the one writing beauty out of every surrender. And now, look at what's unfolding. You're beginning to feel free again. You're learning to breathe deeply, to trust daily, to live without panic even when things don't look perfect. That's not accidental, it's the fruit of release. It's what happens when a heart that once tried to force every outcome finally finds rest in my sovereignty. I never asked you to carry it all. I only asked you to walk with me. And now that you've let go, I can take you places where peace is not a temporary escape, but a permanent residence. So let this be your reminder, my beloved: surrender was never the end, it was the beginning of everything I've wanted to pour into your life. What you released, I've redeemed. What you placed in my hands, I've taken into my care. And now, I smile over you with joy that fills eternity. And I declare again, as I always have and always will, you made me proud. My child, I need you to understand something the world never truly saw. You didn't merely endure what came your way, you emerged from it transformed. What tried to break you didn't win. What was sent to drain you didn't succeed. You came through it not the same, but deeper, steadier, stronger in spirit. And that strength wasn't born from pretending everything was fine. It came from wrestling with real pain while clinging to real truth. You didn't hide your weakness, you brought it to me. You didn't mask your sorrow, you placed it in my hands. You allowed the very things meant to weaken you to become the soil where your roots went deeper into my presence. You didn't settle for survival. You leaned into refinement. You let the struggle teach you instead of destroy you. You listened when others would have shut down. You grew when most would have simply waited for the storm to pass. While others looked for escape, you searched for me and you found me, not in the absence of trouble, but in the middle of it. That's where your strength took shape, not in ease but in perseverance. Not in quick deliverance but in sustained faith. You learned to stand on my promises even when you couldn't see their fulfillment. You let the fire purify you instead of consuming you. I saw the evolution in your spirit. At one point, you cried out for the struggle to end. But as time passed, your cries turned into declarations of trust. You stopped asking why and started asking, how can I grow through this? That shift, my beloved, marked the beginning of your rise. You were not defined by what you lost, but by who you leaned on through it all. Your identity didn't fracture, it solidified. You became a soul who doesn't sway with the winds of hardship. You became someone who stands even when everything else shakes. That kind of strength isn't visible to the natural eye, but it's unmistakable to heaven. I know the nights when your tears spoke louder than words. I know the days when you barely had the energy to put one foot in front of the other. But you moved forward not because everything felt right, but because you made the decision to trust me above your circumstances. That decision became a doorway to maturity. I began building a foundation in you that couldn't be laid in the sunshine of comfort. It had to be carved in the darkness of dependence. And you welcomed the process not perfectly, but willingly. And now look at you. You carry resilience. You speak peace in chaos. You pour wisdom from a well that was dug in adversity. The very thing that was meant to bury you became the catalyst for your blooming. You don't react the way you used to. You don't panic like before. You don't question your worth based on other people's treatment of you. That's Ruth. That's my spirit working in you. You've become someone who reflects my strength without even trying, because it's no longer something you put on. It's who you've become. And don't worry if others don't recognize the transformation yet. Growth doesn't need validation, it reveals itself in time. What matters is that I see it. I was there when no one clapped for your perseverance. I stood with you in the unseen moments when your decision to keep believing made all of heaven lean in with joy. You've come through fire not only intact but radiant. That's not survival. That's divine transformation. So don't minimize what's happened inside of you. Don't call it just getting through. What you've done is sacred. You've climbed mountains in faith, scaled walls of fear, navigated valleys with your eyes fixed on me. And every step has shaped you into a warrior clothed in grace, humility, and unwavering resolve. You don't even realize how strong you've become because your strength came from surrender, not striving. And now, I say this with the fullness of my joy, with the depth of love that spanned eternity. You didn't just make it. You grew. And because of that you made me proud. My precious one, you've walked a path that not many understood. You've journeyed through depths that words could never fully explain. While others were busy measuring outcomes, I was watching your heart, how it bent but never broke, how it yielded without surrendering to despair. And now, after all the quiet faith, all the hidden sacrifice, all the unnoticed obedience, the time has come. I'm raising you not because you asked to be seen, but because you've proven what can be entrusted to one who lives for me in the dark. You didn't promote yourself. You didn't chase influence. You simply stayed faithful. And now, I'm revealing the beauty I've been shaping within you all along. You see, there were things I knew about you that others couldn't see, not because you were hiding, but because I was still completing my work. I concealed parts of your calling, not to punish you, but to protect the sacred process I was unfolding. If I had unveiled you too soon, they would have praised the surface and missed the substance. But now the season has shifted. Now the waiting has reached its turning point. I'm opening doors that no one can shut. I'm calling you into rooms you once only prayed about from the outside. I'm placing your name on hearts you never even met, not because of who you know, but because I know who you are. And when people start noticing, when they begin to see the light shining through your life, they won't just be drawn to your story. They'll encounter my presence through your perseverance. What they'll witness is not the result of effort alone, but the fruit of intimacy, the reward of integrity, the blessing born of consistency. They'll say, "How did they make it through?" And you'll smile, not with pride, but with peace, because you'll know that everything you gained came through grace, and every promotion began in the secret place. You'll carry elevation without arrogance, visibility without vanity, authority without ego, because you've been tested, and you didn't trade your soul for status. What I'm doing in your life now is not just for you, it's also for those who watched from afar, who misunderstood your silence, who doubted your direction. I'm preparing a table not as a spectacle, but as a testimony. You won't need to say a word in defense. Your fruit will speak for itself. Your peace will preach louder than your explanations ever could. This is the season where those who didn't see your value before will begin to recognize the radiance I placed within you. But even more than that, they'll see me through you. They'll feel the overflow of what's been cultivated in the depths of your journey. And remember, I'm not lifting you to place you above others. I'm lifting you to position you where your voice, your heart, your wisdom, and your compassion can reach those I've called you to impact. It's not a crown you wear, it's a mantle you carry. And I trust you with it because you never demanded it. You let me write the timeline. You allowed me to prepare the foundation. And now that the spotlight comes, you won't be shaken by it. You've been built to carry what's coming. Not because you're flawless, but because you're faithful. This moment you're walking into was never about sudden favor. It's the unveiling of everything I've been doing in you, slowly, intentionally, beautifully. And I promise you this, what I'm releasing now will come without sorrow attached. You won't have to fight to keep it. You won't have to perform to maintain it. It will flow because it's been rooted in righteousness. I'm lifting you now, not for validation but for assignment. And through you, many hearts will turn toward me. Not because of how you shine, but because of how you reflect. So lift your head. Walk boldly, not in your own strength, but in the assurance that I've gone before you. You are not stepping into this alone. I'm with you. I've always been. And as I raise you now one step at a time, I want you to remember, I saw your worth before the world ever looked your way. I chose you long before you were noticed. And now, finally, the world will begin to see what I've seen from the beginning. And for every step that brought you here, for every tear, every choice, every moment of trust, I declare once more with all the love in my being, you made me proud. Amen.